Hello and welcome to Team Curie's presentation for this year's Fast Track program. This year in the Fast Track program we were tasked with writing an ebook that discussed a global issue. When discussing our topic we thought of many ideas such as racism, classism, homophobia and discrimination of various forms. After we discussed our ideas we found that the root issue for many of these topics was subconscious bias and ultimately decided to base our book on that topic. Subconscious bias is something that affects all people in everyday life and is something we think is important for kids to be educated and be made aware of as early as possible. We all wish we could have had read this book in P7 and hope it will make next year's S1s more self-reflective and understanding of others. The graph shown here shows all the different types of discrimination we could have focused on. Instead we decided to pick a topic to try and help as many people as possible.
When planning the contents of our ebook, we were given the opportunity to communicate with the P7 class so we could research the audience of the book. To take advantage of this, we created a survey and introductory video for the class. The results of the survey helped us narrow down what we needed to discuss in the ebook and gave us some data that we could use. Here are some examples of questions which we gave to the P7s and some of their responses. Research by Princeton University indicates things such as height, gender, accent, name, and physical attractiveness are common areas of subconscious bias in hiring throughout the world. Our book will educate the future generation to hopefully prevent this. We found that on curated lists of best non-fiction children's books, they are generally based on animals, space, science, and geography, so we included an element of animals in our book to make it more appealing to children. Through our research, we also discovered that there was a gap in the market, as there are few books on the topic of subconscious bias and almost none for younger readers. Another thing we found was that our topic has become an increasingly more searched term on Google, with an all-time peak in 2020, as you can see from the graph below.
Development. Throughout the development stages, we took meeting minutes to make sure all our ideas were written down and kept up to date. Then we began deciding the chapter content and the format of the ebook. We decided that using a comic book story alongside the information would make it more engaging for the P7s. When designing the front cover, we brainstormed several ideas and even tried to incorporate the design aesthetic of the comic book.
As part of the program this year, all profits from the sales of our ebook will go to a charity of our choice. When deciding on a charity, we all did some independent research to find charities that reflected the message we were trying to get across with our ebook and presented the research to each other so that we could unanimously decide which we preferred. We looked at the Joshua Nolan Foundation, the Central Scotland Regional Equality Council and Stop Hate UK. In the end, we decided to go with the Central Scotland Regional Equality Council, a charity which focuses on ending discrimination of any form in Scotland, such as age, disability, race, gender, sex, etc. The first section in our ebook is an introduction to the book, which explains what subconscious bias is. It includes the actual definition from the Collins Dictionary and a little bit about its origins and how long it has been around for. I decided to explain how subconscious bias has been around for a very long time and how it has helped us, to help give a little bit of background around it. When we first chose this topic, I personally didn't know much about it and thought that the primary sevens wouldn't either, which is why it was essential that I introduced it well enough for them to understand.
The second section of the ebook is about the effects of subconscious bias on society. It looks at how both individuals and firms are affected by subconscious bias and how this could possibly limit and harm society. This part takes in information from various studies and rewords it in a way that is suitable for P7 children, while still retaining the all-important information and messages behind it.
Writing: How to Combat Subconscious Bias. As an author, it was my job to make our book understandable for Primary 7s without making it patronising. I looked at research papers online about how to combat subconscious bias in the workplace and applied that to the school environment. I also spoke to my head of house about the kind of subconscious bias training teachers receive.
We edited the book together, taking individual pieces of writing and illustrations and transforming them into a book. We chose a blue/purple colour scheme to match the colour of indigo, the main character of our book. We also decided to include Microsoft icons to add more visual elements, as sometimes big pieces of text can be intimidating and hard to understand. We spent a lot of time to make the book user-friendly and look nice, as it's for a younger audience. I also had to write small passages to bridge some topics together and add more to improve pieces. Challenges: the colour of the text was initially really hard to read as it was white on blue, but was later changed to black on gradient blue to white. This was approved by the group and others asked.
The Firefly page acts as an introduction to our book, containing sections on the people behind it, written by Yashvi, why we chose this topic, written by Holly, why parents should buy this book for their kids, written by Petra, our nominated charity, written by Jake, as well as a trailer for our book. There was a bit of trouble creating this page, as we originally all started writing our sections at the same time, and Firefly wasn't set up to handle this. However, this issue was solved by sending all the sections to one person who would then edit them all in at once.
Why on earth would we need a comic in a non-fiction book? It's all got to do with the psychology behind effective learning. Our book is aimed to teach Primary 7 pupils to identify and combat subconscious bias. However, unlike climate change or overt racism, subconscious bias is a very subtle social phenomenon. Research shows that teaching kids about social situations through just telling them about it doesn't work. Instead, they respond better to storylines, as they can put themselves in the protagonist's place and judge the social situations for themselves. For example, we could have told the Primary 7s about microaggressions and hoped they would have used their knowledge in a social situation. Instead, we've taught them about microaggressions and also given them the chance to discover it and identify it themselves in the conversation between Megan and Indigo. Additionally, Miller's pyramid shows that doing something for yourself helps you retain knowledge far better than just being taught how to do it. So hopefully this will make sure that our Primary 7s will use what they've learned to make the world a better place. After finding out that subconscious bias is best taught through images, I got straight on to developing an art style. My first idea was to go with flame people, to combine our knowledge of chemistry with art and show that different coloured flames are that way due to different chemical compounds, and they can do different cool things. But flame people wouldn't really be able to live on Cerebrum due to it being made of ice, and so we had to rethink the idea, and eventually I managed to combine my love of penguins with the comic. I can finally say it. Welcome to Cerebrum. We made sure our comic book addressed all the issues presented in the non-fiction sections by showing 3 different types of discrimination on the first comic page: overt discrimination by the background penguins at the start of the race, microaggressions through the conversation between Megan and Indigo, and then internalized discrimination through Indigo's inner monologue. And then in the second page, Kai basically explains all this and convinces Indigo that she needs to stand up for herself and fight against these subconscious biases. And then in the last page of the comic, we get to see her do just that and correct some of the mistaken other penguins and teach them about subconscious bias too, just as we would like our Primary 7s to do. I can finally say it. Welcome to Cerebrum. We made sure our comic book addressed all the issues presented in the non-fiction sections by showing 3 different types of discrimination on the first comic page: overt discrimination by the background penguins at the start of the race, microaggressions through the conversation between Megan and Indigo, and then internalized discrimination through Indigo's inner monologue. And then in the second page, Kai basically explains all this and convinces Indigo that she needs to stand up for herself and fight against these subconscious biases. And then in the last page of the comic, we get to see her do just that and correct some of the mistaken other penguins and teach them about subconscious bias too, just as we would like our primary sevens to do.
For this type of marketing, the company will send out codes, invitations to non-existent islands or events, emails from the characters in their shows and books, and among other things, to create a broad range of interest in the product out of sheer curiosity, even if the audience may otherwise not have been interested. One example of AR marketing is how Harry Styles promoted his recent song Adore You by making up an island called Aroda, adore spelled backwards. This created a huge mystery around what Aroda was, and many people who would otherwise never listen to his music got involved in the hunt for Aroda. This hype paid off and the song was a huge success. We hope to use a similar tactic to market our own book by sending emails containing images of the key characters of our books. Every week leading up to the sale of the book, we'd send one email with one of the characters and no other text to the whole of the P7 year group. There would be no context or explanation. We also hoped to pretend that all our social media for the book was advertising the setting of the comic, an iceberg called Cerebrum, and make it seem as if the penguins were inviting people to visit.
Our second marketing strategy was use of social media. We were going to use social media platforms such as Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok to get customers interested in the book. Our handle was Welcome to Cerebrum, as the brain iceberg Indigo, Megan, and Kai lived on is called Cerebrum. We put a riddle in our YouTube book trailer to engage our audience and keep them coming back to find out the answer or to buy the book as it had the answer in it. Social media is used widely and people often forget about a product, so we were planning to post regularly and add countdown stories to remind potential customers that our book was available to buy, but only for a limited time.
Thank you for watching! Be sure to check out our book trailer.